Reimagine how you're controlling your surfboard with this tip.
So most of us imagine we're turning and controlling our wave speed in two ways. By tipping the board sideways from rail to rail, which we adjust by putting our weight on our toes or on our heels, or by tipping it from nose to tail, which we adjust by putting weight on front or back foot. This is kind of how we come to think of moving the board, rail to rail or nose to tail, backside or frontside turns, stalling or leaning forward for speed. It's like the board is moving on a double axis, one drawn straight up and down the board, one straight across the board, sort of like a lowercase T shape. But guess what? This picture we have is out of whack. It's not what's going on. The board isn't moving like that at all, and thus a fair bit of our thinking is going to waste. A good turn doesn't just tilt the board toward the tail or the rail, it does both at once. It happens on the diagonal. To see this, try to imagine a third axis of control. Instead of running down or across the board, this axis runs diagonally from a foot or so back from the nose on one side of the board to a foot or two up from the tail on the other side. So imagine a similar axis line crossing the board from the other side. Now you have a kind of an X shape with the centre of the X meeting on the stringer and the arms heading out through the mid-nose and mid-tail on either side of the board. So this is what I'm fancifully calling the X axis. It roughly matches the tilt of a board during an actual turn, and learning to work your turns through these axis lines is a key to advancing your technique. This is really just a way of thinking about how to put pressure on the areas of board where turns are generated. So here's some signs you're kind of picturing the board as like a T-axis, not an X. You'll be bogging on chop a lot, especially going down the wave face. Maybe you start a big turn, especially a heel turn, just fine, and then you can't carry it. Instead, you kind of catch a rail up front, or you just kind of give up because you know it's not going to work. You're good at getting plenty of speed down the line, but you just don't know what the hell to do with it. Or maybe you're kind of hopping for speed, bouncing up and down on your board, trying to pump it into gear. Oh man. So to get your head around the X-axis idea, you need to kind of do a bit of this while you're surfing. You want to picture how the board tips and planes along that axis and how you can use it most effectively. So angle your feet. Yeah, that again. A back foot set at an angle to the stringer is the quickest and easiest way to gain control of this axis. When you roll forward on your toes, you're weighting the front half. When you roll back on your heel, you're weighting the back half. Likewise, rolling weight from side to side of the angled back foot gives you control over the opposite sides of the axis. So by contrast, shoulders and upper body held relaxed and square to the board helps cut down the variables and lets you focus on working with the board through stance and foot position rather than awkwardly through arm waving, jumping up and down or other sort of slightly bogus measures. What I'm trying to get you to think about here is about how you're working with the board, not how your body's moving around. So instead of hopping, just turn. Hopping can kind of generate some momentum on a crap wave or dead section because you're kind of putting bursts of weight onto the rocker and forcing some lift to occur. But it's kind of T-axis thinking. Watch a good surfer entering one of these dead sections and you'll see him or her immediately begin a series of little banking turns. They'll use the X-axis to produce lift off the inside back edge rail and the side fins. It's way more efficient and helps you carry speed with a lot less effort. And also, it kind of sets you up for a real turn once you've gained that speed. Okay, so here's the lesson, and it's the drop wallet. Oh my God, I know I said I wouldn't promote a single move or tell you how to do one for that matter. But the drop wallet style layback cutback move is the ultimate X-axis turn. Indeed, when you let the rear arm drop back and thus force your weight onto the back inside rail, the line of your arm actually follows the line of one of the X-axes. Try one next time you're going frontside with some speed and an open face. Let the board drift up the face a bit, then lean back with the rear arm dropping down and your shoulders kind of following it, rotating away from the line of the turn. All your weight goes back into that inside back rail and fin, and the board turns on that curve. It turns hard. It shouldn't work, but it does, because you're riding on the diagonal.
Try to think about getting your back foot turned so it faces down the stringer line a little bit more, so it's not square across the board. That'll allow that back knee to come down behind the front knee, and it'll let those weight shifts across the board happen much more naturally.